and a company that was called Incat International that went public in 2004 in the UK. Mr. Tata decided that he wanted to take the customer base that we had in Europe and in North America and converge that with the capacity and the capability that had been established here in India. We can move to the next slide. Here we are. Today the organization is 9,000 people. We are managed out of 16 different geographic locations. There are 27 different nationalities that make up Tata Technologies. And so, although we're very proud of our Indian heritage, we're very much a global company. The company has two components to its value proposition. We do real product development work for automotive, aerospace, and industrial heavy machinery companies. And we also work with those same companies to help them select and deploy the technology on which new products are built. Just to give you a sense of the type of work that we actually get involved with, on the aerospace side of things, we've recently completed the 3 work packages for a European business jet. We were responsible for the center fuselage, the rear fuselage, and the vertical tail. In the industrial heavy machinery space, and that's a space that includes construction equipment, farm equipment, and mining equipment, we recently partnered with a Japanese OEM to introduce a new backhoe loader into the Indian market. We were responsible for the industrial design, we did all of the detail design and engineering, and we also helped that organization launch the product. One of the unique challenges with that particular exercise was that India, as most of you will know, is a very price-sensitive market, and so we were able to profile our frugal innovation capabilities on that particular initiative. But 70% of our business is automotive, and that's the heart of the company. Just give you a sense of some of the things that we actually get involved with. This particular slide denotes 2 concept properties that we have developed over the last 6-7 years. The property on the left is something that we refer to as EMO. That's our electric mobility property. That came out of a challenge that Mr. Tata gave us in 2010 to come up with an electric vehicle that was as disruptive from a price perspective as the Nano was. And so in 2012 we launched this particular product at the International Automotive Show in Detroit, and we positioned a target price of $20,000. And in 2012, the lithium-ion battery that supported the range and the speed that we positioned for this particular property was positioned at a price point of $12,000. And so we had to develop the entire manufacturing footprint and all of the sub-assemblies for that particular product within that $20,000 price range. The second concept is a concept that we've developed as an evolution of EMO, and that's to support last mile delivery capabilities that we believe will become an important part of the growing autonomous driving shift, particularly as e-commerce penetration rates grow around the world. In terms of the work that we do with commercial customers, this is an example of an electric vehicle that we recently developed for a Chinese OEM. This particular company is a company called NIO. They went public in New York in September, and this is their first vehicle, ES8, and it's essentially a mobile living space. It seats 7 passengers, it has a top speed of 110 miles an hour, and it has a range that extends from 220 miles to about 350 miles, depending upon the battery options. We were responsible for the development of the platform, the upper structure. We integrated all of the connected proposition. We were responsible for advanced manufacturing and launching the product. We actually partnered with this organization when they launched the company in 2015, and they had less than 100 employees. And so this is the type of work that we are doing, and this is not just the work that we're doing in different parts of the world. Much of the engineering for this particular product was actually done here in India. Those are the reasons why I think that I'm qualified to make some comments on the industry. And as you may have heard earlier today from Dr. Butchek, the Managing Director of Tata Motors, our industry is changing. It's changing in a fundamental way. 18 months ago, we launched a new European headquarters in the West Midlands in the UK. It's a state-of-the-art facility for 700 engineers in Warwick. We had Dr. Ralph Speth, the Chief Exec of Jag and Land Rover, come and speak to us. And he made a statement that the change in the next 5 years in automotive is going to exceed the changes that we've seen in the last 50 years. Mary Barra, the Chief Exec and the Chairman of General Motors, made a similar statement in her letter to shareholders in 2016. She also gave a keynote address at Davos, where she echoed the same sentiments. And this particular quote is from Bill Ford, the Executive Chairman of Ford Motor Company. And incidentally, 2 years ago, Bill Ford asked his then Chief Exec to step down, a gentleman by the name of Mark Fields, at a time when Ford was generating more revenue and more profit than it had in its entire history. And the reason that he asked the Chief Exec to step down was that he felt that Ford was not ready for the changes that were likely to come in the industry. So our industry is changing in a very profound and fundamental way. And they're essentially changing around three vectors. The move away from the internal combustion engine to alternative propulsion systems, and specifically electric. The change to embrace connected services, and then the change to autonomous or self-driving. And I'll talk a little bit about each one of those in a minute. But these changes are so profound that are likely to drive the type of change that we've not seen since Henry Ford rolled out the assembly line in 1913 in my hometown of Detroit. The way in which cars are designed, the way in which cars are sold, the way in which cars are maintained, are going to go through a fundamental change. And that is going to change not just the product itself, but also the business model that underpins it. Today, the automotive industry is controlled by organizations like Tata Motors, like the big three in Detroit, like the Toyotas and the Hondas. And they control a vertically integrated supply chain, and they have significant influence over the dealers that sell their product. Our industry is going to change over the next 3 to 4 years, away from a vertically integrated industry to much more of an ecosystem. And that ecosystem change is going to fundamentally disrupt not only the industry, but also the economies that they serve. This particular slide denotes the contribution that the automotive industry makes to the economy in the United States. The United States economy is an economy that is sized at about $19 trillion. The automotive industry today, either directly or indirectly, contributes about $2 billion to that industry. So it's about 12%. In Germany, it's actually 14%. Now, vehicle penetration rates in the United States are very high. For every 1,000 people, there's about 800 vehicles. That's 10 times what it is in China. That's 20 times what it is here in India. So the disruption, when it happens, is much more likely to have a more fundamental impact in the developed economies like the United States and Germany. But make no mistake, every single economy that depends in some part on the automotive industry or transportation is going to go through change. Let me talk about the three vectors that I referred to before: the move to electrification, the move to connected services, and the move to autonomous driving. Concerns about climate change and concerns about pollution are prompting a move away from gasoline-powered propulsion systems. Today, less than 5% of vehicles that are sold have an alternative propulsion system. By 2025, that number is likely to extend to at least 25% of all vehicles that are sold. In France, they have made a decision that by 2040, they are going to ban the sale of gasoline engines and diesel engines. The UK has announced its Road to Zero program, and by 2030, 50% of all passenger vehicles, 40% of all delivery vehicles will have to achieve ultra-low emission standards. And even in the United States, with the rhetoric that's currently coming out of the White House, where he's claiming that climate change is not real, 42 states in the United States have enacted legislation to control emissions. And so this pendulum swing away from internal combustion engines, from gasoline engines and diesel engines to electrification, this is very much happening. The pendulum swing is already in play. Today, Tata Technologies is involved in about 17, 18 different programs. That's either ground-up development of vehicles, or the development of top hats, or some form of work package for OEMs. 13 of those programs are electric vehicle programs. And we typically work on what will define the industry in 3 and 4 years' time. So that gives you some indication of the investment and the R&D dollars that are currently going into this space. Just to give you some numbers, in 2017, there were 3 million units of electric vehicles that had been sold around the world. By 2020, it's projected that that is going to scale to about 13 units. And if some of the more generous projections are to be believed, by 2030, that number will scale to 130 million units of either electric or plug-in hybrid vehicles around the world. What's also important to recognize is that this change away from conventional propulsion systems is happening in a different way than the industry's evolved over the last 100 years. And China specifically is taking a lead on the rest of the world. 40% of those 3 million units that I referred to in 2017 have been sold in China. So despite what Tesla are doing, despite what Nissan have done with the Leaf, despite what GM have done with the Volt, there are more electric vehicles being sold in China than anywhere else in the world. And that is set to continue. And that will have a profound impact upon the industry. If you look at the top 10 OEMs today in terms of vehicles sold, there are no Chinese OEMs. But if you look at the EV space and you look at the top 10 sellers, Chinese OEMs dominate. So the center of gravity of the automotive industry is moving away from Stuttgart, it's moving away from Detroit, away from Tokyo and Nagoya, away from Gothenburg, and very much to Shanghai and Beijing. If we now look at the connected proposition, the change here is happening at a much accelerated rate to the change as far as propulsion systems are concerned. It is anticipated that 380 million units will be connected by 2020. That's a tenfold increase on 2015. The way in which, again, cars are sold, the way in which they're maintained, the way in which they are insured will fundamentally change. McKinsey have estimated that by 2030, $1.5 trillion of revenue will be generated from connected services. So as the traditional owner-operated model deteriorates and we move to rideshare and car share, the revenues will be offset by the growth that we're going to see in this space. The thing that will change, however, is that the current players will not be the only players that will harvest that growth and that opportunity. Autonomous driving Um, Traditionally, this has been the preserve of science fiction movies and science fiction books. But I can tell you, because we're working on projects, that in the next 2 to 3 years, increasingly you will start to see self-driving cars roll out here in India and in different parts of the world. And it will have a profound impact upon accidents. It will have a profound impact upon congestion. And if there's one city in the world that needs some help with congestion, it's Mumbai. And it will also have a profound impact upon the support that it will be able to provide to disadvantaged groups that currently struggle in terms of transportation. And I mean the elderly and those that are disabled. Today, there are 1.3 million people that are killed on roads as a result of accidents. 75% of those accidents are typically driver error. So that's drink driving, distracted driving, or mistakes. That's 3,000 people a day, one person every 25 seconds. If there's one reason that self-driving needs to become pervasive, it's that reason. And it has an opportunity to have a profound impact upon that particular system. But our view is that self-driving will not grow in a pervasive way. It will grow in and around islands of automation in urban areas. Self-driving vehicles need to have the ability to be able to look at the environment in which they operate and update on a regular basis their understanding of the terrain. We also believe that self-driving will be driven in terms of growth by the need and the demand of the likes of Uber and Ola and Lyft. And those types of organizations need network intensity to drive the type of response time to 2 to 3 minutes. And that 2 to 3 minutes that they have estimated needs to be the response time to be a tipping point from the owner-operated model towards car share and ride share. So we believe that the growth of self-driving, the growth of autonomous cars will happen in and around urban centres. There are 987 cities around the world that have populations of over 500,000. We believe that these will be the centres for self-driving. But the way in which the industry will grow will be very different in different cities. If you take two cities like Chicago and LA in the United States, Chicago has an urban area, has a downtown area, whereby you have residential properties, you have offices, and you have retail, all in close proximity. Commutes are typically very short, 5 to 10 miles at most. You take something like an LA, most people live outside of the city and they come in to work or they come in for entertainment. In Chicago, we believe that self-driving will evolve in and around pods. In and around utility pods in LA, we will see, I think, much more of the mobile living space, the mobile office be pervasive. So autonomous driving will not only grow, but it will grow in a different way in different parts of the world. Not only will the architecture of a vehicle change to address the use case, it will also change to address the utilization of different vehicles. Today, a vehicle is only used for about 5% of the time. 95% of the time, a vehicle is typically stuck in a garage, next to an office, or alongside somebody's house. And so vehicles will need to be much more hard-wearing and much more durable. And that will present a specific challenge to organizations like ourselves that are in the business of automotive design. One use case which we believe will explode is last mile delivery capabilities. This is an area which we believe will drive a significant demand for robo delivery capabilities. Amazon have just bought Whole Foods in the United States, and they've launched a service called Amazon Prime Now, where for $7.99 you can pay to have your groceries delivered within 2 hours. And and they've cultivated a collection of drivers that they contract with to support that service. They've got on public record that their ambition is to replace those drivers with autonomous delivery capability and potentially drones. JD.com in China. China is the largest e-commerce market in the world. Has recently piloted robo-delivery capabilities in Shanghai and in Beijing. And they are taking goods from wholesale delivery centers to high-rise flats and apartments. And they're positioning lockboxes in front of these high-rise apartments. And these lockboxes, from a temperature perspective, are being controlled remotely, and access to these lockboxes is being controlled via facial recognition. So these things are happening today. This is not 5 years from now, this is not 10 years from now. And over the next 2 to 3 years, the changes will start to roll out for everybody to see. So our industry is changing fundamentally. It's changing along 3 vectors: electrification, connectivity, and the move to self-driving. So what does this mean to India? And I'll close on this. India is a unique market. It's a very price-sensitive market. You take cities like Mumbai, the average speed is about 15 miles an hour, and so vehicles will need to be optimized to work at that speed. The infrastructure is not particularly mature, and so one could take the view that India should wait and address some of these issues before it takes on the opportunity to be involved in some of the vectors of change that will define the industry globally. My view is that we should see these opportunities as an opportunity to commitment. And Tata Technologies wants to be very much involved in that. We have an opportunity, I think, to develop very price-sensitive solutions for electric vehicles. We have an opportunity to develop electric batteries that operate at very high temperatures. We have an opportunity to develop connected services that not only serve India, but if we can get them right and we can achieve the right price points, can be disruptive in terms of the global market. With that, thank you.